My father-in-law demanded $8,500 for a business and refused to explain it. When I said no, he called me stingy and then turned our marriage upside down in revenge. Just recently, my father-in-law has done something that has now placed my marriage in jeopardy. James is my spouse, and we have been married for the past 5 years. We also have a beautiful son together. I deeply admire how James works tirelessly and how devoted he is to both his family and his career. We both earn decent salaries, but we manage our finances differently. I am responsible for paying the mortgage on our home and covering all household expenses, including electricity, water, and internet. Meanwhile, James handles all of our son's expenses, such as school fees, clothing, and anything else he needs. In addition to that, he provides monthly financial support to his parents and also contributes to our auto loan payments. Although James' parents are retired, they have no savings to rely on. They have 2 daughters besides James, who is their oldest child. His parents never had a strong financial foundation, and over the years, any money they had went toward medical bills and paying for their daughters' weddings. Because they were left with no resources, James took it upon himself to support them. Whenever necessary, he ensures they have enough for daily expenses, groceries, and medical checkups. Unlike their brother, his sisters do not contribute at all. Instead, they take advantage of their parents by treating them like free babysitters, leaving their children with them for hours without offering any financial help. It is always James who steps up to make sure his parents are cared for while his sisters continue to use their kindness without giving anything in return. I am willing to support James in caring for his parents. I make it a point to visit them every weekend, to check on their needs and spend time with them. I always ensure their refrigerator is fully stocked with fresh produce so they never have to worry about running out of food. I also help my mother-in-law with her garden, which I know she loves. I want to support her in maintaining its beauty because it is something she takes pride in. Beyond helping with everyday needs, I also try to ensure she has time to relax and feel appreciated. Every month, I take her to a spa for a day of pampering and a massage so she can unwind and enjoy herself. After dedicating so many years to working hard and caring for her family, I believe she fully deserves it. Among all their children, I genuinely feel that James and I have done the most to support and assist his parents. Providing financial help is not the only thing we do. We make every effort to take actions that make their daily lives easier and more comfortable. Yet, despite everything we do, James' parents seem to have a special preference for his sisters. They consistently place their daughters above everyone else, no matter how much support we provide. They barely acknowledge our son, yet they use the money James gives them to buy gifts for their other grandchildren. This becomes more and more obvious with every Christmas that passes. They go out of their way to buy expensive gifts for their daughter's children, yet they never make the same effort for our son. He received nothing more than a single pair of socks from them that entire year. Both James and I have been aware of this for a long time. But to maintain family harmony, we have chosen to keep quiet. We have no desire to create unnecessary conflict. Still, it hurts to realize that our hard work is overlooked while his sisters, who put in the bare minimum, receive all the favoritism. Then last year, my father-in-law's behavior began to change. He started forming friendships with other retired men in his neighborhood. Every time I saw him, he was full of enthusiasm as he shared the many things they were teaching him. According to him, they were showing him how to invest his money and even encouraging him to start his own business. The idea seemed to excite him, and I honestly thought it was a positive development. I encouraged him, assuming that working on a project of his own would keep him busy and engaged. I believed it would be good for his mental health, giving him a sense of purpose and helping him avoid feeling aimless in retirement. I had no idea what was truly coming. Not long ago, my father-in-law approached James and me with a request that was anything but small, more like a demand. He told us he had finally settled on a business idea and now needed a substantial amount of capital to begin. He made it very clear that he expected our full support to bring his vision to life. Naturally, I was curious and asked what kind of business he planned to start. But instead of giving us any details, he brushed off my question. He said he would not share his idea with anyone because he didn't want it to be stolen. That struck me as strange from the beginning. If he was so confident in his plan, why wouldn't he give us at least a basic idea of it? Then he made the shocking announcement that he wanted us to give him $8,000. James and I were completely taken aback. That request was far from minor, the amount was enormous. My father-in-law immediately dismissed James' explanation that we didn't have that kind of money readily available and instead called him stingy. He became defensive and emotional, insisting that we should trust him. "Do you not trust me?" I am the one who gave birth to you. If I wasn't sure of what I was doing, do you think I would ask for this amount of money? He said confidently. Trust me and give me the money. I promise I will pay you back with interest. James was stunned, but he gave a hesitant nod as if he was genuinely considering it. Meanwhile, I sat there in disbelief. Something about the entire situation felt extremely suspicious. My father-in-law had been retired for many years. And even before that, he never really held a stable job. And now suddenly he had what was supposedly a brilliant business plan, yet refused to share any details. On top of that, he promised an almost unbelievable return on investment. Everything about it seemed far too good to be true. I explained to James, Father, that any savings my husband and I had were savings we built together. And because my husband already carried so many financial responsibilities, I was the one who contributed the most to our savings. Therefore, if he was asking us to invest such a large amount of money in his business, we would need some form of guarantee. I made it clear that it was entirely his choice whether or not he felt comfortable sharing the details of his business plan. However, if he chose not to disclose any information, we would require proper documentation to ensure that the money would be repaid to us in the future. The moment I said that, both James and his father seemed deeply offended. When I asked my father-in-law to sign paperwork simply because he was borrowing money from us, his face turned red with anger, and he immediately started shouting. He couldn't believe I would make such a request and felt that asking him to sign documents was an insult. He told me I should trust him. And to my surprise, James sided with his father. According to him, he had complete confidence in his father. And because we were financially able to give him $8,000, he felt it was not something we should be arguing about. I was utterly shocked by what I was hearing. Even though our finances were stable, that did not mean we could simply hand over such a substantial amount of money without any form of security. I argued with James, insisting that our savings were not his to give away. The money we had accumulated was meant to support our future, and more importantly, our son's future. We both worked hard to build it, and he had no right to treat it like his personal fund to distribute without my agreement. If he wanted to help his father, we could discuss it properly, but expecting me to hand over our hard-earned money without a second thought was unreasonable. I responded to James in a way he found extremely offensive. He shouted at me, accusing me of doubting his father and implying that his father was trying to steal from us. I stayed calm and assured him I had said nothing of the sort. I was simply being practical. Neither James nor his father was willing to listen to my logical reasoning, even after I pointed out that there was no guarantee this business venture would succeed or that we wouldn't end up losing the $8,000 we loaned him. I also noted that my father-in-law had never repaid us for anything in the past. Yet he was suddenly starting a business out of nowhere. I made it clear that if I were to loan such a large amount of money to anyone, I would need some form of assurance that it would be paid back. They continued insisting that I should trust them because we were family. They acted as if I were the unreasonable one simply because I wanted to be cautious. From there, the situation escalated. My father-in-law, visibly furious, burst out in frustration. He shouted that in his day, women were not even consulted about these matters. And he didn't understand why I was interfering. He made it very clear that he believed this was something to be discussed between men and that it was inappropriate for me to question him. Then he turned to James and said something that left me horrified. He told him that he needed to keep his wife under control and prevent me from being involved in matters like this, as though I were an unruly animal that needed to be reined in. In that moment, everything became clear to me. This was no longer just about money. It was about respect. And it was painfully obvious that I was not being given any. His words were deeply offensive. Don't get involved, as if I required my husband's permission to speak. I refused to stay silent in the face of such disrespect, especially when he was the one asking us for financial help. I looked directly at him and said exactly what I was thinking. I reminded him that he was the one begging for our money. Nevertheless, he had the audacity to verbally attack me simply because I was a woman. I made it absolutely clear that we were not going to give him a single cent of our money. If James wanted to help his father, he would have to come up with the money on his own. Our savings account belongs to both of us, and James did not have the authority to withdraw any funds without my consent. The moment I said those words, my father-in-law completely lost control. He started screaming at me, throwing out accusation after accusation, as if I had personally wronged him. James did not seem any more pleased. His expression tightened, and it was obvious he was furious. Still, instead of escalating the argument, he tried to calm his father. He asked my father-in-law to give us some time and promised that he would talk to me. This seemed to settle my father-in-law slightly, and eventually he left our home. Once he was gone, however, James and I got into one of the worst arguments we have ever had. He accused me of being rude, cold, and cruel for refusing to help his father. He believed I had disrespected him and humiliated his father by giving such a direct refusal. But I didn't see it that way. I told James that his father was trying to take advantage of our hard-earned money without any regard for us, refusing to give even the simplest details, and resorting to insults when I didn't immediately agree. How was I supposed to trust someone who couldn't even explain what the business was about? I can see that James is torn between me and his father, but at the same time, I feel completely alone in this situation. Instead of considering things from my perspective, he is making me out to be the villain simply because I refuse to be manipulated without pushing back. Honestly, that hurts more than anything else. So now, I am going to update Reddit. I know with absolute certainty that my father-in-law is not someone who can be trusted blindly. And I am genuinely relieved that I trusted my instincts and stood my ground. If it had been up to my husband, the $8,500 would already be in his father's hands by now. Without any hesitation, James is completely at the mercy of his parents. He never refuses anything they ask of him, no matter how irrational the request may be. His father knows exactly how to exploit this dynamic, taking advantage of James' sense of responsibility, guilt, and loyalty to get him to comply. As a result, his father relies on him whenever he needs money. He has never once asked his daughters for financial help, and there is a very clear reason for that. He knows they would not give him a single cent. They feel no obligation to support anyone, and they certainly do not allow themselves to be pressured into giving money. My husband, on the other hand, is an easy target. My father-in-law knows he can depend on James to step up every single time, no matter how much it inconveniences us. Now for update number 2. Recently, my husband and I have been fighting more than we ever have before. The stress in our home has become unbearable, all because of the relentless pressure his father is putting on him. Every day, James receives a flood of calls and messages urging him to give his father the money. Things have now become even worse because his mother and sisters have joined in. Instead of accepting that $8,500 is a large amount of money and that we are completely justified in wanting to think things through, they keep telling James that, as the eldest son, it is his duty to fund their father's business venture, regardless of any concerns he may have. If that weren't already bad enough, they have now begun attacking me as well. They constantly call me greedy and a gold digger, as if I am the one selfishly hoarding money, when the truth is that I am only trying to protect our family's future. They claim I am trying to destroy the unity of the family by refusing to support my father-in-law's unreasonable demand. The most painful part of all this is that it is starting to affect James. I can see it happening gradually. The guilt, the pressure, the emotional manipulation, everything is wearing him down. It feels like they are brainwashing him, and he is slowly convincing himself that they are right, and that I am the one being unreasonable. It feels as though I am losing him to his family. No matter how hard I try to reason with him, they keep pulling him further and further away from me. James keeps insisting that we should just give his father the money and treat it as a one-time investment. He argues that whether we get the money back or lose it entirely does not matter. He just wants the situation resolved and wants to make his father happy. But I disagree completely. I have told him repeatedly that I am not comfortable with that. We are not his family's personal cash machine, and I am exhausted from them constantly coming to us whenever they need money. It never ends. They keep taking, and the moment we finally say no, we are painted as the villains. At this point, I realized I could not simply sit back and hope James would avoid making a reckless decision. I knew I had to act. So, as a precaution, I withdrew my share of the money from our joint account. I did not make this choice lightly, but I could not risk it. I was the one who had contributed the most to our savings up to this point. I had worked tirelessly to build that financial cushion, not only for us, but for our child's future, for emergencies, and for stability. I was not going to let it all be drained because his family viewed us as their personal ATM. If I had left the money there, I knew exactly what would happen. James was desperate for his father's and sister's approval, which put him in a dangerous position. They would keep pressuring him, wearing him down little by little until he finally gave in. And once he gave them money, it would not stop. They would continue returning, demanding more, inventing new excuses, pulling him deeper and deeper. There was a very real possibility that, without me there, James would hand over every last dollar. I couldn't let that happen. At least now I have control over my share. I can be certain that the money I worked for is safe. If James still wants to give his father money, then that is his responsibility. He will have to figure out how to do it without jeopardizing the financial stability I worked so hard to build. Update number 3, James tried to withdraw $8,500 from our account without my knowledge. Just as I suspected he would. And he was furious when he discovered I had already withdrawn my share. He yelled that his family had been right about me all along. He insisted that, as the head of the family, he had the authority to decide how our money should be used and that I had no right to act against him. Our arguments became more intense with each passing day. Then, in what James described as an act of retaliation, he decided to leave our home. He packed his things and left, saying he needed to teach me a lesson about family ethics. It felt like being slapped across the face. This was the man with whom I had built a life. The man I had loved, supported, and stood by for years, the man for whom I had made sacrifices. Yet when the moment came for him to choose between his parents and his wife, the wife who had done more for them than his own sisters ever would, he chose his parents. I am devastated. For years, I have treated his family as if they were my own, doing everything in my power to support them financially, emotionally, and physically. Yet simply because I refused to hand over a substantial amount of money that I might never see again, I am the one being punished. However, the more I reflect on the situation, the clearer everything becomes. It would not be right for me to agree to give them $8,500. No matter how much pressure James and his family put on me, I am certain that I am not in the wrong. I am standing up for myself and for the financial well-being of my children. So if James wants to destroy our family over this issue, and if he truly believes that walking away from his wife and child is the right thing to do, then I will not stop him. This is a decision he must make on his own. But I will no longer allow myself to be manipulated or guilt-tripped. If standing my ground means losing him, then so be it. In the end, I deserve a partner who values me just as much as I have valued them. Update number 4. 3 months have passed since my last update. My husband is still living with his parents and has refused to return home. It seems as though he has fully settled in with them. Despite everything, he has made no attempt to reconcile with me. Though he no longer communicates with me, he still makes time for our son. He visits him every other day and spends time with him, which I appreciate. He has not abandoned his responsibilities as a father. But as for our relationship, we no longer speak at all. We do not discuss our marriage or anything about us. Nothing. It seems the anger he felt the day I refused to give him the money has not faded. It is as if he is holding on to resentment and refuses to accept that I was fully within my rights to stand firm. However, yesterday, out of nowhere, he contacted me. At first, I was shocked. We had not spoken in weeks. So my immediate thought was that something had happened to our son. Since it was his day to care for him, my heart raced as I answered the phone, bracing myself for the worst. But what he said next completely stunned me. He sounded extremely distressed throughout the call. And for the first time in months, his anger was not directed at me. He told me that he had just discovered the reason his father had been so desperate for the $8,500. It was not for a business venture. In fact, there is no business venture at all. Instead, he discovered that his sisters had been pressuring their father to buy a family vacation home for them. According to their reasoning, owning a vacation home would be a wise investment for their children, giving the family a place to gather and create lasting memories. However, neither of them was willing to contribute even a single dollar toward purchasing the property. They had no interest in paying for it themselves. So they convinced their father that it was his responsibility to make it happen. Rather than rejecting their request, my father-in-law tried to obtain the money from us. Daniel admitted that if we had given the money to his father, he would have eventually come back asking for more. The $8,500 would not have been the final amount. It was only the beginning. He would have continued making excuses and hiding behind his fake business idea until he had collected enough money to cover the cost of the vacation home. When I heard this, I felt a complicated mix of emotions: anger, frustration, and, most of all, validation. Everything I had suspected was true. I was not imagining things. I was not being selfish. I was the only one who recognized the manipulation from the very beginning. Now Daniel sees it too, and he sounded genuinely upset during our phone call. His voice was strained, and for the first time in months, he actually sounded remorseful. He apologized to me, something I truly did not expect after everything we had endured. This time, he spoke without anger or defensiveness. Instead, he expressed regret. Daniel confessed that before discovering the truth, he had already lent his father some money. As he explained how he had genuinely believed his father's story and thought he was doing the right thing by supporting what he assumed was a legitimate business venture, I could hear the frustration in his voice. However, he had been deceived. He was deeply shaken after confronting his father about the situation. He admitted he had been lied to and felt betrayed, humiliated, and disgusted by the manipulation. He acknowledged that I had been right all along, that I had seen the warning signs, that I had protected our money, and that he should have listened to me from the beginning. His voice sounded hesitant and almost unsure, as if he knew exactly how much damage had been done but was still clinging to the hope that everything could go back to the way it once was. He told me that once he realized the extent of his family's manipulation, he could no longer continue living with them. The betrayal, the lies, and the fact that his own father had taken advantage of him had shattered something inside him. He confessed that he felt ashamed for blindly trusting them and for allowing them to influence him into taking a stand against me. He said it had become increasingly difficult to stay in that house under the same roof as those who had lied to him and pressured him into making a decision that destroyed his marriage. He no longer wanted to be around them. He wanted to come home. But for me, it was not that simple. I took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. A few months ago, I would have done anything to hear him say this, to hear him acknowledge what he had done and finally see the truth. But now that the moment had arrived, I did not feel the relief I had expected. Instead, I felt angry, hurt, and doubtful. I made sure he understood exactly what I had been feeling. I said, "When you walked out of our home to stand by your parents, you broke my trust." It was not just the fact that he had left. It was everything that came with his decision. It was the way he dismissed my concerns. The way he allowed his family to insult me over and over again. He had cast me as the villain simply because I refused to be taken advantage of. He made me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. He acted as if my opinions did not matter. As if my financial contributions and sacrifices meant nothing. And now, after months of choosing them over me, after watching me endure the humiliation of being labeled a gold digger and someone who was tearing the family apart, he suddenly wanted to return. I did not feel it was right for him to come back. I made it clear that I was not ready to simply forgive and forget. I told him that he had made his choice the moment he walked away. At this point, it was my turn to make a decision. Before I could even consider allowing him to return to my life, I needed time. Time to process, time to heal, and time to determine whether this marriage was still worth saving. Update 5. I reached this conclusion only after deep reflection and immense emotional turmoil. It took months of therapy and countless difficult conversations with Daniel to arrive here. But now I am certain that our marriage cannot be saved. When Daniel first suggested relocating to our hometown, I did not immediately agree. I was still deeply hurt by the way he had treated me, the way he chose to side with his parents instead of me, allowed them to insult me, and left our home just to prove a point. Still, a part of me held on to the hope that we might somehow repair things. So for the past 3 months, we tried. We attended marriage counseling. I sat across from him session after session, pouring out my heart and trying everything to help him understand how deeply he hurt me. I told him how his doubts, his blind loyalty to his father, and his complete disregard for my feelings had broken my trust. I explained how humiliating it was to be called a gold digger by his family, when I was the one handling most of our financial responsibilities. I told him that if we were going to move forward, things had to change. We needed to cut his family off financially. We could no longer be their safety net. We could no longer step in every time they mismanaged their lives. We could no longer make sacrifices for people who saw us only as their source of income. We needed firm boundaries. That meant going low contact, not severing ties entirely, but creating necessary distance between us and Daniel's manipulative family. But Daniel refused. Despite everything his family had done, the lies, the manipulation, the financial exploitation, he still insisted he could not abandon them. He maintained that it was his duty as the eldest son to support them no matter what. Even though they had used him, disrespected me, and nearly destroyed our marriage, he would not let go. That was the moment I reached my limit. I realized nothing would ever change. Even if I forgave him now, the cycle would repeat. Daniel would continue giving more, and I would always fall to the bottom of his priorities. His family has never apologized for the awful things they said to me. I will not keep living like this. I will not stay in a marriage where my voice is drowned out by his family's demands. I will not remain in a marriage where I am expected to sacrifice my financial security for people who contribute nothing. I will not continue in a marriage where I must constantly fight to be appreciated, respected, and heard. So I have decided to leave. I am choosing to prioritize myself. I have spoken with my lawyer, and I will be filing for divorce. Daniel made his choice, and now I am making mine. I will not stay in a relationship where I will always come second. I deserve more than this. This time, I am choosing myself.